Psychological theory of self-determination is widely accepted in psychology and basically explains that intrinsic motivation and passion is actually what predicts incentive.
Now, that's not real psychology.
Coach 'em up, Nick. Coach 'em up, Nick. Coach 'em up, Nick. Get your mind right.
Hey, what's up? Welcome back to Coach 'em Up, Nick, and I am Nicholas Davenport, aka Mr. Mental Muscle. And today we have a clip from the Jubilee channel. And I actually been on this channel before in an episode about steroid users versus natural people. I was obviously team natural, but basically want to check that out. I'll put a link somewhere. But this episode was about a capitalist versus 20 anti-capitalists. And that intrigued me since I'm a business owner and I want to make a lot of money. I'm a six-figure business and I'll make 7. So I guess you can see what side I'm on. But there was a part where an individual spoke on psychology, and I think I know a little bit about that. And I wanted to go over some of the things she was saying because they weren't quite as accurate as they should have been, given someone who says she has a background in sociology/psychology and she studied these things. So I want to break that down and coach her up. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two.
Zena.
Awesome. So this claim about incentive is one that we see often promoted by capitalism enjoyers, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this idea that, profit incentives is the only thing that can make humans do things, get up out of bed every day, which has never been the case. Historically, it's not the case psychologically.
Historically, it's never been the case?
No.
What has been the case?
So we've seen...
What's been the incentive?
The incentive is intrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic motivation?
Of course. Have you ever heard of...
So let's stop right there. Intrinsic motivation. So the name intrinsic means internal. So internal comes within you. So it's basically motivation that comes from the individual for the sake of what they truly want. The passion, the drive from within that they just want to do it no matter what. I always ask people when it comes to intrinsic motivation is if you could wake up at any time of the day and just do it, you don't need no kind of monetary reward, no kind of push from someone outside of you. That's intrinsic. But this is not simply just one-sided. There's something called extrinsic. You can assume it's the opposite. It means what do you do that you need some external reward or some kind of incentive outside of yourself, such as money, like working a job or doing it for a loved one or a friend or a family member. So it's not such a cut and dry statement. So let's see if she goes any more into that.
Intrinsic motivation?
Of course I have. So you think people are going to go just do anything for no incentives?
The incentive is intrinsic, meaning passion, interest, and honing your skills.
Whether you get paid or not.
Well, the problem is that we're forcing people to, need to, work to survive.
So what's the alternative? So give me another solution, another economical system.
Talking
yeah,
point?
actually, I'm curious.
So the psychological theory of self-determination is widely accepted in psychology and basically explains that intrinsic motivation and passion is actually what predicts incentive. You're arguing that incentive is integral.
So let's stop right here. Self-determination theory. This is a theory created by Deci and Ryan. And I actually have a lot of content I've made about just this thing, but she's kind of wrong when it comes to self-determination theory because that's the assumption that 1, you're competent, 2, you're autonomous, and 3, there's some relatedness. So those are the 3 frameworks of self-determination. Look at the name. So you hear self-determined, so you could think that what she's saying makes sense. But in actuality, to be competent, that kind of goes to more what Pat Bet-David is saying, because to be competent at something, what do you have to do? You have to practice it. And if you have to practice it, that means you have to want to do it. So that's where the autonomous side comes in, to become competent. And if you want to do it more, you get better at it and you're competent, you're going to do it more socially around people. So use an example of an athlete. I work with a lot of athletes. And when we talk about this is if I work on my jump shot, when I'm not that good at it, I'm probably only going to do it when it's me by myself in the gym training with no one else around. But the more I do it, because I want to get better, the internal or intrinsic motivation, then I get more competent, I make it more, my form looks better, then I'm going to do it around other people. And therefore, if it's a game, that's going to help me win the game. But if we take it back to the capitalist argument, for people to get more money and more incentives to work, they got to get better or work harder at what they do to get the incentive or the reward. You see how this is like almost a revolving door, right? And that's why her point makes sense, but it kind of doesn't, because in order for self-determination theory to make sense, you have to want to do it regardless.
To profit-driven motivation, that's not true. Extrinsic motivation, all times, at every single case, is going to, predict less creativity, less motivation, less skill, etc. Intrinsic motivation is what causes things like technological development. Some of the greatest breakthroughs have been.
So she's not completely wrong there. Actually, she's right. Intrinsic people are usually your artists, but there's a term, starving artists, right? So it does breed a lot of room for creatives to thrive. But guess what? You have to live in our society. Money is necessary. So when she says it breeds creativity, but someone also may argue that necessity is what creates creative works, because if you need something, you got to figure out how to do it. And survival of the fittest, right? That's why we're still here as humans. We have so much contraptions like a camera, a microphone. So she's not wrong actually here, but there's more to it than that.
People who are devoted in honing their skill.
So should they get paid for it?
I think that we shouldn't live in a system that privately owns the means of production and forces people in this position.
What college did you go to?
USC.
You went to USC. What did you major in?
Sociology.
Sociology. Who's your hero as a professor? Who's the professor you look up to?
This doesn't seem like a topic that's related to capitalism.
This question? The reason why I ask this question is because somebody convinced you of that. Somebody convinced you that is the way that
psychology and studies convinced me of this fact about the human mind.
Don't do that. I hate when people make it about the study, psychology, because even in my field, I come from the performance psychology industry. They always lean on the studies. But remember, psychology is one of the most subjective fields. It's considered a soft science. Now, while there is biological and neuroscience that backs the behaviors, it's not so cut and dry. And most of the times with the studies, they're citing references of things that had 15, 20 participants usually. And if it was a bigger study, they're done through subjective means such as like assessments where they got to put strongly disagree all the way to strongly agree using the Likert scales. And that could be inaccurate because usually people answer with their best foot forward. You're very rarely going to say, I handle pressure horribly. Strongly agree would be honest if you do handle pressure horribly, but most people aren't going to do that. They're probably going to put themselves in the middle of the road. Or they might lie completely and say, no, I never fall under pressure. But you can see how that could be disingenuous for the sake of studies. Now, it doesn't mean discount studies because the things I create do reference these same things, but I don't get so married to them. So when people say that argument of, oh, the studies told me this, told me that, I don't really buy into that fully. So there's that.
Fortunately, to your claim, results show that the greatest economical system is capitalism that allows people to go above and beyond and solve every single issue out there. And
so that can't be truly true because there's plenty of businesses that require no creative works. They're just mundane. Like there's companies that sell bags of ice that are worth millions, no creativity needed. So I get what she's saying. So I'm not mad at her line of reasoning, but from the psychological aspect, that's just not fully true.
Entrepreneur who gets up, who says,
what was your claim again, mister?
I'm going to incentive. The entrepreneur
what about incentive?
Who has an incentive to go out there and build their lives, and you put
so
no
I'm
monetary
saying that this incentive that you're talking about, what predicts the best incentive, the best strive, and the best creativity
so what do you think about
has
Elon
been proven
Musk?
by psychology.
What do you think about Elon Musk?
Can we respond to my claim?
This is about incentive.
All right, awesome. So you're arguing that incentive is intrinsic and tied to extrinsic motivation. What we find is that the best incentive comes from intrinsic motivation.
So a person that's passionate about solving an issue is going to build.
So I hate to cut him off again, but the best motivation is a balance of both. So she's making these absolutes, and in psychology, you cannot do that. That's not me just talking. Psychology is such a subjective field, abstract thoughts, that you can't say it's this or that. It's not that black and white. But honestly, the true studies will say that the mixture of both. Because if I always gave you what you wanted, always what you needed, you're going to eventually say, I don't care anymore. So for example, imagine you had a rich friend who got everything he wanted. He had a nice Benz, G-Wagon, whatever, had a nice watch, Rolex, all the great stuff. So he would never truly appreciate it because if he broke it or lost it or wrecked it, he knows he's going to get another one versus the person whose intrinsic motivation did it all on their own. They're going to be more cautious because they know it took me to do this. I wanted to do this. But they both have their downsides. The extrinsic is good because you need something outside of you saying, let's get this, let's get this. But the internal is good because it says, well, regardless, I'm going to have the drive and discipline to make it happen. So the best approach, and I talked about this on other videos when it schedules a reinforcement of giving them a reward or some kind of reinforcement that's productive, or taking it away, or giving them something they don't want, or taking away something they don't want. That's the best mixture of being motivated. So it's more than just cut and dry.
Something bigger than somebody else that's not.
Yeah, so someone who has a true passion for this.
Yeah, so
exactly. So profit motivation is not the thing that's driving innovation, right?
Of course
psychology.
It is. Of course
so
it is.
psychology proves that that's not the case.
There's not,
that profit's not the reason that we have the greatest inventions that we do today.
I don't know if I disagree with the fact that there's a passion behind it. Are you saying people with passion, even if there wasn't the incentive to make as much money as they would make, people would still pursue it even with or without money?
That's what psychology says.
Well, your claims are wrong because
that's not true.
whoever your psychology professor is, if you look at data and you find out how America, that's only been around for 249 years, schooled all the other countries that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years more, they did better than others because the incentive
because they accumulated
was free
profit,
market capitalism.
right, to 1% of the population and continue to produce on that basis.
Okay, this is going more so into the semantics of capitalism now, not more so the psychology, but a lot of good points were made on both sides. So I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater for either of them. But all in all, if I give you true coaching on how to deal with motivation, it needs to be both. It can't just be always me, I want this, because you're going to get caught up in a loop or a cycle of doing things that may not serve you, because how do you know if it's working? You need some kind of result. If I just keep doing what I think is right and to no avail, the simple fact that I love it is going to lead me to bad decisions. I'm a business owner and I had people around me who have done this where they were chasing these things because they felt it was good to do or it's what they wanted. And outside of even business, the things that you usually don't want to do is the things that will get you further. Now, on the other side, if you only do extrinsic, it's going to extinguish yourself because you're no longer going to want to do it. It's like eating your favorite food every single day. Eventually, you're like, I could eat this every day. Next day, this is so good. I love this food. The next day, all right, I like this. The next day, eventually by the third, fourth day, you are sick of that food. That's exactly how extrinsic motivation. So you got to keep the brain guessing. Remember, the dopamine response, people use this term so much, but truly what dopamine response refers to is the almost getting it to not getting it, to almost getting it to not getting it. And the gaps get further, then closer until you do get it. And you start that cycle over and again. It should be like a mountain valley. You don't always want to get it. The further that gap is to be motivated, the more likely you're going to quit. The closer that gap is, what's the point of doing it? So to keep it fresh or sharp, like in anything, you got to keep it mixed up. And that's why being a risk taker and trying things that are more out of your comfort zone, going back to that self-determination theory, is important. So with this being said, Jubilee, I've done stuff with them, but this topic for what I just covered, it was pretty interesting. I love when psychology get brought into these types of things, but what do you think? Do you think intrinsic motivation actually is more important, or do you think extrinsic is, or do you agree with me from what I know and think they're both needed equally? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for letting me coach you up.